What's up, everybody? My name is Eric Beach, and I'm a film director, screenwriter, and cinematographer, and a bunch of other things. And I'll get into that because what's important to know about film in general is that there are a plethora of paths you can go. There's not one direction. You're not just one thing. And when you are one thing in the film world, you're still learning other things. So you can always go in different paths if you maybe don't like a certain direction or you start to like something else. And I know that sounds vague, but it's just such a big conversation that I want to set the tone for film in that way, is that there are an innumerable amount of paths that you can go. Just look at any film and watch the end credits and read all of the job descriptions, whether it's a cartoon from Pixar or a live action film. There is minutes and minutes of scrolling credits from jobs that you're going to really be confused by. Things like Best Boy and Grip, things of that nature, from the ones that you know above the line titles like director, screenwriter. So one thing from the start is that there is no end to this discussion of where you can go in cinema, in narrative film, in documentary filmmaker, in commercial filmmaking. One thing I'll start with here is I just said commercial, narrative, and documentary filmmaking. All of them are telling stories, but they're all telling stories in a different way, and they're all fun and creative in their own way. Documentary filmmaking is telling a true story, something that happened in the past, something that's happening right now, or following something as it's going to happen in the future, hoping it turns out the way you want it to. And that's a big hope. I've been working on a documentary for 3 years as one of my projects, and the reason it's 3 years in the making is it was a 1-year process, but because of reality, you have to stay flexible because reality often changes and doesn't listen to what you wanted to tell. It doesn't follow the guidelines of the story that you set out to tell. It's life. So in my situation, I had to deal with my main actor breaking a leg. Not in the way that you say, go break a leg. I hope you get the part in the play or do well in your in your acting job. No, he literally broke his leg. And because of that, the main climax of the film, the whole build up to what we were telling, had to be pushed back by at least 6 months. So that added 6 months to the budget, to the scheduling with people, to the complexity of the shoot, and it changed the story that we wanted to tell, which was that of a veteran who left the military after a bad injury, finding a new mission and purpose in life through professional wrestling. And I arranged it where he was going to wrestle his greatest icon of a wrestler, Rob Van Dam. And it was weeks, like 3 weeks before that shoot date, where he was going to wrestle his hero, his childhood hero, and he broke his leg. Crushing. So the story changes. So you have to stay flexible enough to follow that ever-changing story in a documentary. So one thing with documentary and all of filmmaking, if you want to do this, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to change your plan sometimes in the moment, on the fly. You have to stay open and ready to see where the story takes you. And that's part of the fun. If that sounds fun to you, then filmmaking is absolutely an area that you should look into. Because every day on the set, whether it's a narrative film, documentary, or a commercial, and I mean commercial as in an ad for Ford or anything that you see during the Super Bowl, all of those are commercials, and that's a very lucrative way of making film if you can break into that. But no matter what it is, you will have a plan, you will go and enact that plan, and something will happen. It's inevitable. Whether it's interpersonally with another person on set, or it's the story's not working because up here it sounded great, but then you're seeing it in the lens, you're seeing it on the viewfinder, and you're like, this is not what we had in mind. It's not working, so what small adjustment can we make? But with that is another fun part about it, is you have so many different things you can do. If you look at the titles, like I said, the end credits, and see the names, you have director. They're going to be the ones who sit and work with the actors, and you're going to have to, again, be very flexible and firm in ways. You have to be open and firm. You have to be open to other people telling you what might work better, because that's going to help you enhance, because it's a collaborative effort. Filmmaking is collaborative, and it has to be. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best out of anybody that's working with you. If you don't like to get into story, if you don't like to think from perspectives of others, it's a tough one for you, because you really need that. And that's not just to write a good story. That's not just to direct the actors. You have to care, because no matter where you are on that set, it's a long day. Whether it's a commercial, documentary, or a narrative film, it's a long day. An average shoot day for a film is on the low end, 10 hours in a day. Usually it's closer to 12 hours of shooting. So when you're talking about a typical day of filmmaking, you first have to realize there's no such thing really as a typical day. There's moments that are the same. There's processes that stay the same. There's technology that stays the same. But you have to be flexible within that, and no job is going to be the same. I mean, it's one of those careers that you can work from home. It's one of those careers that you can have an office, and oftentimes we're working with freelancers. So if you're, whatever your job is in the world of film, you're not necessarily working for a company that you work at, 9 to 5. You're going to be waiting for a call, an email that says, we have this job we'd like to bring you on for. Whether you're the guy running sound, the girl doing the camera, you're writing the narrative, the script for it, you're producing it, you're helping establish locations, whatever your job is, you're often an independent contractor that sits and does other things until this person and this project calls you to do this thing. And then you accept it or you don't. So once you've accepted a project, you're going to be on phone calls, you're going to be emailing, you're going to be talking about the story. Perhaps if you're not building the story and you're just helping tell it through technology, you're going to be given that script, you're going to be given the story, and you're going to be having to assess and decide what technology is necessary for you to help the team tell the story. So even in this little setup, it's me in the room. I have a camera. I've got a viewfinder that's showing me the image because I don't have someone running the camera. I have a microphone right here on a stand that I've rigged up to sit above my head. So a stand, microphone, and if I didn't have that, it would sound a lot worse than it does. And if I didn't have the light diffused by this big silk screen, this white piece of fabric, it would be a lot harsher and it would not look as smooth. So that's right here. Just what I'm doing right now is 1, 2, 3 or 4 jobs. You could have 3 or 4 people running each one of those things, and that's really nice because then you can just focus on what you're doing. But when you do everything, you open up the possibility of mistakes. You possibly might not be able to work as fast because they've come in and set up these different things, but it's something you can do alone. And it's a really great way to learn how to do this. But just in this room, there's 4 jobs that you could have. You could be working with lighting. Your job is to come in and you're going to set up lights. You're going to set up diffusion panels, reflectors. You're going to take black cards that subtract light. So it's all about learning the qualities of light and shaping it, so that you can move this light over here. Now it's hitting me from the side and you'll have shadows on this side of the face. So there's a reason you'd want to do that. You might have it straight on like we are right now, just to be flat, like just so you see everything. You're not trying to create a mood or anything, but it's an incredibly artistic position or technical. I've met both people who are in the lighting field that really want passionate, moody, colored lighting. And then you have people who just know the light value, what is necessary to illuminate the scene so that I can have the outside exposed where you can see out there and light the face. Because if I take the light away, you would still see outside, but you wouldn't see my face. And that's what they'll do, is they'll set the exposure so you see the outside, then they'll come in and bring a light and adjust it until you see me and the outside. So it's a depth of the frame. We can see a lot more interest in the frame. So that's what they're doing, is they're working with the camera to create the light environment. And it's fun for a lot of people, and that can be a whole career that you just focus on being the director of photography, the gaffer. Then beyond that, you have electrical that works with the gaffer. And this person is going to take the lighting, run the electrical. So if you're an electrician, if that's something that you're interested in too, you have a job on a set, because all of the lights have to be powered on an appropriate power grid. So I wouldn't know that. I've gone into houses and I've blown fuses because I put too much power into the outlets, and all of a sudden everything's gone. You got to go to the basement and flip a breaker switch. So then you got to run your power from this room, and then you got to go over here with an extension cord, and you got to power it from this room, and you're in 3 rooms just so you can light one scene. But if you have someone who's an electrician, then they can just do that for you, and you don't have to worry about it, because you know the amps and the volts and all that stuff for each individual light. And audio, I mean, that's a whole nother world too, because if you don't have good audio, you don't have much. I mean, you can get away with blurry video, not the best quality. You can use your cell phone and get pretty good video. But if you don't have good audio, it's going to feel bad. So I can take an iPhone, film myself with this microphone, and it's gonna be better quality than if I have some ambient sound from a crappy microphone with high quality video. That's just the way it is. If you don't believe me, try it yourself. See what you like better. Get a good sound and not such a great video, and then a really great video and not such good sound, and see which one you prefer. And if you have a really good understanding of music, of sound, you can have a lot of fun getting great sound in a film. And if you don't like being live on set, there's Foley. So if you're wanting to take the video that doesn't have sound, and then you want to try to find out how to create those sounds and record nature sounds, record your hands with high heels on them, trying to match it with the person so you can hear the clickety-clack of the walk on different surfaces, that's a whole art form as well. One that a lot of people don't know about. And then you also have the camera operator. So the thing I'm staring into right now, there is a whole job that someone has to operate the camera, has to set the exposure, set the color, so that they get the best quality image for someone to use and edit in post-production, which is a whole nother field. But camera operating is where I got my start, where I had a DSLR, just a Canon 5D Mark II, that was great for pictures, but also did video. And there's a lot of cameras out there that are prosumer, that are under $1,000 you can have and use, or like I said, your cell phone. So no matter what your role is on set, even if you're an assistant that's just going to be grabbing and moving light stands, grabbing and moving the camera bag, assisting the camera operator and getting their gear set up, whatever it is, setting up sound, running memory cards to and from different departments, just helping out, running and getting coffee, whatever it is, you're going to come into a family of people who are all trying to work together to create this beautiful piece of art, this beautiful story. And there's so much variety in it that there's no such thing as, I would say, a typical day that I've experienced, because even if the project is the same as one that you've done before, you're more than likely working with different people. Even if that's in front of the camera, the actors will change. So you have to have a dynamic with them and understanding what they need to give you the best performance. So there's fun in that too, is if you like psychology, as a producer, it's really beneficial to have that. As a director, it's beneficial to have that passion, because each person that you direct or work with is going to have a different communication style. And if you have that ability to just communicate what is needed from the production, it's a really valuable asset to have as well. And to put one more stamp on the typical day that is not typical, I'll give you, some idea of some of the projects I've worked with. I've done commercials for learning organizations, for other teachers to look at and see if this is a conference event that they want to go to. I've covered conference events, I've covered parties, I've covered city events that, we can tell the story of what happened that day. I've worked with an open adoption, a couple who was adopting a baby and they wanted to share the story of the process of going through an open adoption. I've also written and directed a horror film, a short horror film. I have also done a documentary, and I'm still working on the one that's 3 years in the making, of a wrestler who got shot in the face while he was in the Army, got discharged from the Army, and used wrestling, professional wrestling, to help himself heal mentally and emotionally from PTSD. So there's no such thing. None of those projects are typical. Like, none of them have a set pattern that you say, I do this, and then I do this. They're all different, and you have to be open to the difference in story as well. And that's one thing I love about film, is that there's just so much variety, it's hard to get bored with it. Because when you're doing something, like I've been bored writing a screenplay, but then there comes a point where there's another project going that is at a different stage, and then I get to go direct actors. And that's one of my favorite parts, is to work with the actors to get the best out of them. So then I get done with that, and I can go back to writing. I might get a fresh idea. I might live a little life, and I might say, that would be perfect. That's the story I want to tell. That's how I can change the character from this point to this point. Like, that's exciting. When you have these moments of breakthrough, and it can be really frustrating, but when you love something, you're willing to get frustrated with it and keep coming back to that thing. So that's one thing I love about it, is it's one of the things in my life that no matter how frustrated I can get with it, I can't put it down. I have to keep coming back in some way and do it. Another thing I love about it is it allows me to work with music. As a musician myself, who is not actively in a band or has any real instruments to play with besides pots and pans in the kitchen, I get to work with music. I get to go score my own films through websites that have royalty-free or licensed music. And so when I find the right piece of music, this process, I might sit there for, an hour just listening to different songs, listening for that right moment, for whatever I need my story to tell. I'm looking for that right piece of music that can help me tell that story in a way I can't without just visuals. And when I hit it, there is a feeling that washes over me that I can't describe other than saying it's just goosebumps and I know it's right. And there is something sacred about that moment. Like, I love it. And when it hits, it's just like bathe in it, And that's sometimes that's what filmmaking is jumping between these moments and then working hard because that moment, that payoff is going to be so worth it. And perhaps the thing I love most about filmmaking is I love story. I seek it out. When a story is presented to me, I can't help but be inspired by it. Even if I never make a project about this topic, about this story, I think of it that way. I see it as a movie. I experience it. So I could potentially write those characters. I experience what this person's telling me, and I value that. I feel honored to be able to allow someone to feel so comfortable that they'll tell me the deepest, darkest secret. That they'll share these really painful moments, these really elated moments, and let me talk to them about it. And so when I'm hearing story, when I'm writing story, when I'm producing it, when I'm seeing what I've written come to life in the viewfinder, it's like something didn't exist and then it exists now outside of here. And one of the questions I get asked most when people find out that I work in film is, where did you go to school? Is film school worth it? What would your suggestions be? I've got a kid who wants to go to film school. And I went to film school for, a year and a half, something like that. And I can tell you, I wouldn't go back. This is not a path that's necessary for becoming the best filmmaker you can be. Whether that means you're making the movies, you're directing the movies, you're writing the movies, you are running lights, sound, doing the camera work, whatever it is, producing, there isn't a necessity for you to go to college for it. I'm not saying you can't go to college. I'm not saying you can't go to college to get a degree in something you're passionate about. I'm just saying that if you're trying to accelerate your career, or you believe the only way to get your career off the ground in film is through college, then that's just not the case. Not that you're not needing to get educated. You absolutely do need to learn things, because I had to as well. But the ways that you learn and that you get into a crew is through relationship, is through doing it. And that was the only thing that film school did for me that I could say was positive, is it gave me a chance to work in the field. But I was already working in the field, so it wasn't like I was learning a whole lot. And since I've left that, I don't work with any of those people. It was all through other projects that I did independently that allowed me to work with, people that I'm working with, doing projects that I'm doing. And I've got friends that, graduated with their 4-year degree in film school and they're not using it, but they were $110,000 in debt. So it's really tough for me to say no to people for film school, but I won't recommend anyone goes to it unless you're going for a different reason than accelerating your career. If you truly believe the only way you can learn about film is going to the school, if you want to be immersed in that film school atmosphere, there's value in it. There are sets that you can work with. There's gear you might not be able to get your hands on, but all of that stuff you can get through looking into your local community or neighboring big cities and finding a crew to volunteer for. People will allow it, and you get to still be around that gear. You get to still be around it and learn from people who are really doing the jobs. And the school that I learned from, not the school of college, not the university, but the online school that I've taught myself and continue to learn from, YouTube. YouTube has so much information about filmmaking. Just go search Film Riot, Peter McKinnon, some people like that, and just immerse yourself in it. Whether you want to be an actor, an actress, a camera operator, an editor, there is thousands of hours of content that you can consume and learn really good stuff. There's stuff that I still go to YouTube for to understand if I want to do an in-camera trick, if I want to get a certain lighting technique that I'm not quite nailing. There's just tons of stuff. I just have to search it. And I'm not against people going to college to get a degree. There's actual jobs in film, like the line producer, that you have to have business, you have to have accounting, so there are behind the scenes jobs that you would need education for, because to get licensed in accounting and to work on the office that deals with the budget in the film, like, you have to have that knowledge. So when I say film school isn't necessary, you're not learning about budgets in film school. You're not learning about law. Like, if you want to be in legal teams in the film, like, which is a thing, a bigger production does have a law office. You can't just learn it on YouTube. Like, you can't go to a master class. You actually have to go through that process. So I'm talking about the more artistic, hands-on production people. And as far as like who's right for it, what skills, what traits do you need to have to be good for the world of filmmaking? That's also kind of a hard one, because they overlap, in my opinion. So you need to be patient to be in film, because there's long days where some parts of the day you're doing nothing. Like, your department isn't working because the director of photography is working with lighting to shape, and the actors are sitting there. And if you're the actor, you might be not sitting there. You might be off somewhere else while there's a stand-in, an assistant that's just sitting in a chair to kind of get the lighting scheme right. And that can be an hour or 2 hours. Like, it does happen. So patience is a very big deal. And also, when things aren't going right, you need patience to work through it. If you're not patient, you can get overwhelmed and then just, we're done. Like, this is just fine. Like, I'm not dealing with it. So you put out something that's subpar because you settled for just moving forward and didn't know how to get there. Another huge one is communication. Communication between your peers, communication between the actors, communication between the client. All of those things are huge. If you don't know how to communicate with people, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get on set. If you're the best filmmaker in the world, but nobody wants you around because you're mean, you're cruel, you talk behind people's back, you feel entitled, so you don't feel you need to work, they're not going to want to work with you. If you're careless with equipment, they're not going to want to work with you. So, you have to have communication. You have to understand and respect what is on the set, who is on the set, and the workflow of everyone around you. So if you have an issue, learning how to be able to communicate that issue. If there's issues between cast members or crew, being able to communicate and help those people solve that problem is going to put you up in spades with people, because that's the kind of people, that's the kind of energy they want on set. And if you can bring peace to the set through your communication ability, people are going to teach you every other skill you need to learn. If you're running a camera and you need to learn how to pull focus or tilt pan, do some kind of a, Steadicam vest operator where you have that real smooth gliding shot, you have to wear this big apparatus to do it, and get certified, people are going to work with you. People are going to teach you those things. If you're working with sound, the person is going to work with you and teach you. If you're teachable, if you're respectful, they're going to work with you. But if you complain, if you're noisy on set when people are supposed to be quiet, if you're just trying to joke around the whole time, which there is plenty of time for laughter and jokes, but if you can't switch it off and get focused, it's going to be a lot harder for you. But if you can do those things, people will take care of you. People will do what they have to do to make sure you're happy on set too, because they want to work with you. Be the sponge. Be the person who's motivated to work hard and is okay with working hard, meaning sitting still and not making noise while the rest of the set gets figured out. And as far as classes that you're going to take, not talking film school, not talking college necessarily, but even if you're going to college, there are electives you could take that would be helpful. But English courses, as much as people might not like them, learning how to write well will serve you if you want to write a screenplay. It's a completely different format, a completely different animal than writing a novel or a term paper, something like that. But it is very much reliant on your ability to understand character, which you learn through literature courses, character studies of famous works of art, of books from the past and present that are of high quality, and understanding why the characters work, why the unique voice is unique in this character versus this character, so you have difference, what story elements there are in that story, the beginning, a middle, and an end, conflict, the rise in conflict, the fall of it, the change that happens in the character, the hero's journey. All of those things are found in literature courses. And outside of it, outside of school, you can still, there's tons of books on it to look into, but learning about that. There's also art classes. You might think you're just doing a painting, but you're also learning framing, because when you frame a shot, you have the rule of thirds. from top to bottom, left to right. You have the rules of thirds. You're studying light and perspective. When you frame a shot, you can think of it like a painting and put your character in the right spot. Because if I'm sitting here looking at the camera, it's going to be different than if I'm facing this way. So if I set my subject right here, this is going to look completely different, and it's not going to be fun to look at for a really long time. But if I'm looking this way, then I have that third. I'm in the far third of the frame. If you divide it into thirds, in sections, then I would be on the line in the third. But if I go like this and I'm on the third on the other side facing this way, it's going to be a different feeling. It's like I'm staring at a wall, right? So this can make it feel like oppressive. You can communicate something in this. You can learn that in an art class. But if I'm talking to you here, it should be balanced. So art classes, when I was in school, one of my favorites was digital communication, where we learned radio, we learned photography, black and white, film. So we developed our own film, with point and shoot cameras. And then we got to do some work with VHS tapes and camcorders and stuff and make our own movies and edit them. And I got into 3D animation for advanced communications. And again, I don't know what courses like that exist now, but I'm confident that if you can find something that works with story and digital formats, it's going to help you when you go into your career as a filmmaker without going to college even. But anything that you can learn with, English and the arts, an elective form, that's going to be an important one for you. And also, if I can say, physical education, getting active in sport and things of that nature to strengthen your body, because it doesn't sound like film is a physically demanding job, but when you're on your feet all day, when you're lugging around equipment, if you're running camera, I've had to pin myself in weird positions with a tripod over my face just to get this shot of this character in a bed, because we only had about like this much space between the bed and the wall to shoot. If I wasn't healthy enough and flexible enough, I couldn't get the shot. So keeping your body in shape is also really important to do too, because it's going to save you a lot of pain in your neck as well as your low back if you're taking care of your body. Problem solving is another huge trait and ability that you need to have in film. Now, this is, mostly the people who are above the line. This is the people who you see their names at the beginning of the movie, the director, the producers, the director of photography, the writers, things of that nature. Those are the ones that are really responsible at the end of the day for everything that you get to see on screen. The people who are below the line, the camera operators, the sound, the lighting, and all those people are responsible for taking the vision that they're given to by the above the line people and making it happen. Those people who are below the line will still have to communicate problems to the above the line people, the appropriate person. And the hierarchy of that is very important, so that if I'm running lights or sound, I don't go to the director. I do not talk to the director. I talk to my gaffer. I talk to the best boy, whatever the key grip. I talk to the person in my department who's my supervisor, and they would take that, if they can't fix it, to the director or to the assistant director. However that shoot is lined up. Okay, so that's key. But you're always troubleshooting. Sometimes you go to a venue and let's say I had one where the room that we were shooting in, I was supposed to make it all black. And I couldn't make it all black because I had this light that's keying the person in the frame, and it's supposed to be just blackness around them, but the back wall was too close. So because the back wall was close, it was bouncing light back into the camera, and I could see stuff on the wall. So what we had to do was start searching around. We were shooting in a hotel at the time, in one of those big conference centers, and we had a closet, a very long closet, but it just wasn't doing it. So we went and found the staff and asked if we could control the lights in the conference hall, and they said we could. And because of that, we were able to have this bigger space, kill all the lights in there, only light it with my lights, and then we got to achieve the shot. So if you're not going to be problem solving, if you don't try to figure it out, you're just going to give up. But there isn't really an option to give up. You have to keep finding ways to do it. In my documentary, Ben, my main subject, breaks his leg on this wrestling move. And at that moment, he was 3 weeks away from wrestling his hero. And so what do? It's a problem, right? Like, do you quit the movie? Just say, we didn't get it done. Sometimes dreams don't come true, children. We could do that. We could go that direction. And there's value in that, I suppose. But you talk to your big talent. You call Rob Van Dam. You tell him, here's the situation. You have to show him appreciation if he's willing to rearrange his schedule because he's very busy and there's only so much time you can get him. And then you try to make it happen. And then you rehab your actor and you shift your story to tracking that rehab because you're flexible enough to do it. You get the date scheduled and you hope that it works out.
It's like I close my eyes and I'm right back in Texas. And I'm right back with that trach and like waking up in the middle of the night and like touching my throat and to make sure my trach's not there. And it's ridiculous. But like every time I do it, I have this huge sigh of relief. Followed by dread because it's like, is this the dream or is this real? It's just like I had all these plans, and I think that's the biggest thing that parallels this to Afghanistan. It's like I had all these plans, I had all this stuff mapped out, it was all ready to go, it was all confirmed, it was all top notch, and I had a clear path, and then everything just fell apart. Like, I feel like I let the fans down because of getting hurt, and I feel like I let my guys down from being hurt because not everything's gonna get changed. I feel like I let you down, and I let the documentary down because it was something that was supposed to be one thing, now it's getting all switched around. And I feel like I let my wife and my kids down because we were supposed to go to Disney World today and do stuff as a family, and I robbed them of that, and it's just like I can't do anything. Like, I can't take it back, can't fix it, can't change any of it. And that's the worst part. Like, worse than the pain in my leg right now is just, like, knowing, like, I feel like I let a lot of people down. So I'm sorry. I'm gonna try something right now. I don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna try it. I'm gonna call Rob. Hello, Rob Van Dam.
How are you?
I have been better. I'm calling you with some bad news.
I saw a picture of you in the hospital, dude. I'm assuming this is related.
Yes, it is.
What's going on?
I broke my leg.
And as I mentioned, technology is a big part of filmmaking, and it's very vast. Like I said too, that I mean, there's no end to it. We can talk about camera department. We can talk about 4K, 6K, 8K cameras. Some of them valued over $100,000. There's gear like that you might get your hands on. There's sliders where some of them are motorized and you have to computer program the sliding movement of the camera that it sits on this platform. There's cranes, there's jib cranes where it's sometimes 30 feet long, and you're putting your camera on one end, and 30 feet this way you have all these counterweights you have to balance, and it's just like literally just a smooth touch, and you have this big sweeping shot that goes from floor level all the way up to above a building. There's drones now. There's also audio. There's really awesome mics and recorders that you can get to work with. There's lenses. There's tons of lenses that it's kind of fun to get to know them all and play with the different focal lengths and understand what a 16 millimeter is going to do for you versus a 50 versus a 135 versus a 200 millimeter. The compression of space and the oblong nature of getting a wide angle lens like a 16 and then getting really up close to it, and how it just morphs everything versus, just being back here and having it nice and wide. And as far as technical skills that it goes into operating all of it, it's just knowledge and respect. None of the stuff that I work with now, whether it's sound, lighting, camera, I didn't know any of that stuff. I just had to care enough about it to respect it, to not be careless with it, to protect my gear, to learn what all the functions of the camera are, to learn what a basic understanding of sound and light, was helpful, but you can learn all that stuff. So it's not that you have to have this massive technical knowledge of any piece of filmmaking, of writing, of any of it. It's more so a respect in approaching it, that you care also enough to learn about it. And when people teach you, that you hear them. And to round it up, at the end of this conversation, let's talk money, because that's a big deal, right? Also, it's a very, very varying conversation as well. You can do it for free. A lot of people, when they start, are doing things for free. They're just getting experience. So it's not a hobby, but it's a hobby with intention of going somewhere. And there is upward mobility. There's a lot of places you can go with it, depending on how you plan your course. But it all starts with just getting into it and unfortunately not making a ton of money. There's also organizations, trade organizations, unions, that if you pay money after meeting certain requirements, you can command bigger salaries where you get day rates, because it's not really a salary in film when you get to certain things. If you work with commercial people who make commercials, there might be a day rate that you get that's different than if you work on set for a movie. Partly because, a commercial could be a day of shooting, it could be a week, but narrative film is going to be months and months and months, depending on where you get into the process. Technically, it's years worth, 2 or 3 years to make one movie, because you have to start with the screenplay, you have to start with getting all the people cast, you have to get the producers to secure the money of the investors and, business plans and all of that kind of stuff. And depending on what you're doing in film, you're coming in at a different place. You're coming in afterwards and editing. Like there's pre-production, production, and post-production, and they're all making different agreements with scale, and most of it is scaled through day rates. So director of photography, if I'm doing a commercial, I've worked on a commercial, and if it's me, my camera, 2 cameras, so 3 people working, you get $3,000 for the shoot. And that means that I can give myself however I want to break it down after covering costs. So you figure if I made $2,000 if one commercial, and I can do that, at least a couple times a month, that's $24,000 to $36,000 I can maybe make with effort as a starting. And it's not a bad way to go. It's just, if you want to get to those higher numbers, you're going to have to be in different areas, because plenty of directors, an average cost in the movie world, independent features, is $75,000 a year for a director. A director of photography, $65,000, but those numbers go over $100,000. I mean, if you get into the big leagues, obviously they're making millions. So it's really hard to say what you can make, but depending on where you are in the country, if I'm in Los Angeles or New York City, then I can make more money, but I'm also paying a lot for cost of living. For example, the very famous documentarian Ken Burns, he used to live in Brooklyn, New York when he was young. That's where he was born. And he started making documentaries about the Brooklyn Bridge, and quickly realized he didn't have enough money to live in Brooklyn and make movies. So he had to decide, what was he going to do? Was he going to work and probably shelf his documentary and never get back to it, but he ends up working at a job he doesn't love for the rest of his life? Or does he move to New Hampshire, where he can afford to live and make the movie? He moved to New Hampshire, and so he lives in New Hampshire. But he has a cost of living that allows him to make movies consistently, and now he does, very well financially, but he still lives in New Hampshire because he realized, well, I can live here, pay less money, and reduce my overhead and still do what I love. So there's plenty of people who work in film that make normal salaries, $65,000 a year. There's plenty of people who make more than that. But the thing you have to know about, if you want to make more money in film, to really go up the climb that ladder, you're also climbing a lot of time commitment. So when you think of someone who's making $1 million directing films, their life really revolves around that project, which means they miss out on a lot of family time. So if family time is hugely important to you, and that's, something you can't give up, then there's a limit to where you can go in film. That's just a harsh reality. So you have to find what you're okay with. And that will be your limiting factor. How hard are you willing to work to get there? How much are you willing to sacrifice? And that will determine how much you can make. So I hope this has been helpful, and I want you to understand that if movies are something you love, it doesn't mean necessarily that movies are what you should make. But what you can do is start to invest some time into looking behind the scenes, going on YouTube and searching for what it takes to make a movie and learning about different jobs. Even if the worst case scenario is that you just learn a little bit more about how movies are made, that's cool. But you might find out that you have an almost endless hunger to learn about all of the aspects. And I would recommend that if you do pursue this, that you would get to know every aspect of filmmaking, even the business side, because that's really important too. Because you can know how to run camera, lights, and sound, but if you don't know how to build the business or understand what your worth is and how much money you should be making, knowing that stuff is very important. So there's a lot of stuff that's not fun to learn about this world. But if it far is outweighed by the stuff that you do love to learn about, and you love story, and you want to help tell stories, or you want to tell your own, and that's a big thing for you, this is a path that you should absolutely look into. And if you really want it, it is possible to get into it and have a nice career and make a lot of great friends, because it's a team atmosphere. It's everyone working together, and that's a bond. When you spend that much time with someone to create something, it's not easy. That's where bonds are formed. And the family of film is a very real thing. And it's been very important to me throughout various parts of my life. So I love film. I always will. the way in which I engage with it will change. And if you pursue this path too, know that it is ever changing. And if it ever gets stale, there's plenty of opportunity and plenty of other directions you can take it. So thank you for your time, and I hope this has been helpful.